is Monday, June 15th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, Israel's foreign ministry publishes a report on last summer's Gaza operation, intended to preempt the UN report, expected to be released this week. Israel's Druze community is calling on the country's government and the international community to help the Druze in Syria, which are facing a growing threat of being massacred at the hands of Islamic State militants. And later on the show, something lighter but painful. Tel Aviv's Tattoo Festival draws a crowd from around the globe, as well as one very committed reporter. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi, and we begin today straight here in Israel, where the Foreign Ministry published a report about last summer's Gaza war protective edge. 9 months after the end of the conflict, which claimed the lives of nearly 2,200 Palestinians and 73 on the Israeli side, Israel revealed the findings of the investigation into the conduct of its forces and that of the Hamas militants it was fighting. Put together by the Justice and Foreign Ministries with input from the security establishment, the 242-page report comes days ahead of the much-anticipated UNHRC report, whose results are expected to be at the basis of any Palestinian war crimes case against Israel before the International Criminal Court. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the UN report, which is expected, as we mentioned, to be released as early as tomorrow, possibly, is a waste of time, according to him, citing that the UNHRC is hostile and compounded by anti-Israel bias. That said, how much water, so to speak, does Israel's sponsored report hold in the court of international public opinion? That remains to be seen. But to help us figure out that answer, we are joined in studio by Walla diplomatic correspondent Amir Tibon. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
By I-24 News, a Middle East analyst, Ali Waqid. And before we break it down, let's take a look at the following report and discuss.
Almost 1 year since Operation Protective Edge was launched, and the fight over Israel's actions is intensifying.
The report demonstrates unequivocally that the actions taken by the IDF during Operation Protective Edge were in accordance with international law. Our actions emanated from the need to protect the safety of our citizens who confronted murderous terrorist organization that was doing a double war crime. It fired deliberately on civilians while hiding behind its own civilians.
2 new reports, one by a group of international high-ranking military officials and another by a panel appointed by the Israeli government, concluded that Israel's conduct during last summer's Gaza war was defined by a high degree of restraint and that allegations of war crimes against the IDF are baseless. The first report was written by a commission comprising 11 former chiefs of staff, generals, senior officers, political leaders, and other officials from Europe and the Americas, headed by General Klaus Neumann, the former chief of staff of the Bundeswehr and the former chairman of the NATO Military Committee. According to the group, which received full cooperation from Jerusalem, Israel had sought to avoid a conflict for months despite receiving rocket fire at civilians and was ultimately forced into a defensive war.
Once the war had begun, Israel made repeated efforts to terminate the fighting. The war that Israel was eventually compelled to fight against Hamas and other Gaza extremists was a legitimate war, necessary to defend its citizens and its territory against sustained attack from beyond its borders.
The group further said in the summary of its findings that
Israel not only met a reasonable international standard of observance of the laws of armed conflict, but in many cases significantly exceeded that standard.
The second report, which was handed in Sunday, focuses on problematic incidents during the operation in which Palestinian civilians were hurt or killed. These 2 reports precede the expected release later on this week of the United Nations Human Rights Council report, widely expected to adopt a far less sympathetic view of Israel's actions. Jerusalem did not cooperate with the UN probe, claiming the Council's decisions over the years have proven to be biased against Israel. The Council's report was even delayed when the head of the investigative committee, Canadian legal expert Professor William Chavez, resigned from his post over Israeli claims that he had worked as a consultant for the Palestine Liberation Organization in 2012.
First joined via Skype by former commander of the British forces in Afghanistan, retired Colonel Richard Kemp. Colonel Kemp, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you with us. And also over the phone with us is Rebecca Shimoni-Storley of the Times of Israel based in Washington. Rebecca, I'm going to start with you real quick. When it comes to this report that Israel published on itself, that Israel did the investigation on itself, so to speak, in Washington, not just because it was Sunday yesterday, I'm assuming there was no reaction, nobody fell off their chair.
I would say the word was crickets. You could hear crickets chirping in the halls. It was so silent. Of course, everybody here also knows that the UN report is coming out later today. And certainly there was very little official or otherwise response to the Israeli report, partially because the results of the Israeli report were anticipated, but more importantly, because it is the weekend in Washington and it would take an earthquake or perhaps yet another, heaven forfend, Gaza war to wake somebody up here on a Sunday in June.
And I think the question also remains, what happens after the UN report comes out? But, you know, we'll probably find that out throughout the week. Colonel Kemp, I would like to ask you, because you've been in war theaters, you've fought, you know what armies face. But when a country publishes an investigative report on its own conduct, does that hold any water in the international courts if it, you know, goes beyond or on the sidelines of established or the institutions that are supposed to do that, meaning the UN?
Well, first thing I'd say is I don't think very many countries, if any, have ever produced such a detailed, comprehensive, and to an extent self-critical report on their military conduct as this report by the IDF and by the Israeli government more widely. So I think we should welcome the report as being it's not simply a whitewash operation. This is not them saying everything was great, it went well, there were no problems. It makes it clear that there were cases where Israeli soldiers probably transgressed, where mistakes were made which led to people getting killed, and so on. I think it's an important thing. Now, you know, when you're talking about Israel, the default setting is unless it's hugely critical, unless it's condemning of Israel, then of course it's worthless, it's pointless. So I think there will be a negative reaction to it, as indeed there will almost certainly be a negative reaction even to this report by the 11 senior military people that you mentioned.
No, exactly. But everybody's staying with us. Amir Tibon, Wallace Dem, diplomatic correspondent. Starting off with the fact that how did this report even came about is most likely the Israeli government attempt to preempt and deflect. Is it going to do the job when Prime Minister Netanyahu actually comes out and says that, you know, the UN body that is in charge of releasing their report is, I think he called it, it's
biased anti-Israel,
biased anti-Israel, exactly.
Well, I don't know. It's too early to tell if the report will have the desired effect, but I think it's worth the effort. Because basically, in the past, what Israel did was just say, we're not in the game. This is against us, and we're not going to play the game. And this time, it took a different decision, which I think could turn out to be smart. We don't know yet. Which basically says, we're going to put out our own version of the event. We're going to show you what really happened. Now, some people in the world won't listen anyway. You have a lot of people who don't really care, who don't buy the Israeli version, and at the end of the day, it's very hard to fight the numbers. The numbers show that there were many more Palestinian casualties. Israel and the IDF, they have good explanations for it, but it's hard in the international arena to play this game when the numbers are like this. But on the other hand, I mean, not playing at all is also, could be just, you know, you technically lose without even trying. So putting the effort is important. I think that the more important thing is what Israel does on Gaza today, because this report will have a better standing and it will have a better effect in the world if Israel is perceived internationally as trying to solve the Gaza situation and avoid the next conflict. And we know that there have been all kinds of negotiations with, you know, international mediators between basically Israel and Hamas, not direct negotiations, via third parties. But via third parties, exchanges of information. And I think that if this becomes more public, and if this is something that Israel puts on the table, and Netanyahu has said it a few times, he said rightly that Israel has done more for Gaza's reconstruction than any other international player in the year that we've had since the Gaza war.
The money that was pledged by international players that never
Israel
arrived.
put more effort than anybody else so far. So this could be the real game changer. The report is important, but showing real progress on Gaza, I think, could be even more helpful for Israel to deflect all the biased reports coming from the UN.
But the overlining, and Ali, that to you, the overlining idea behind the UN report is something that I think Israel is quite terrified of, will be used eventually in unilateral moves by the Palestinian community or by the Palestinian leadership to try and push Israel towards some form of action in, at the UN. Reactions in Gaza to this report, nobody really cares, right? That's
no. Nobody's taking seriously this report. General Colonel Camp talked about the self-criticism that was in the report, and there was no serious and significant self-criticism in the report. It was not mentioned in specific cases of families that disappeared due to mistakes that the Israelis then demanded pardon of the Palestinians and of the international community. It was interesting to see that the Palestinian Authority that kept a neutral position vis-a-vis this report, because Abu Mazen accused both Israel and Hamas of committing a war crime in the Gaza Strip, and there is no doubt that the Palestinian Authority is expecting also the UN report that is expected also to accuse both Hamas and Israel for committing war crimes. Hamas, of course, is denying totally and completely the Israeli report. They are pointing to the timing of this report and saying that this report aims mainly to put pressure over the UN institutions and of the UN report. This is why nobody is taking seriously, but I think that unlike what the Palestinians think, the fact that the Israelis are publishing these kind of reports will serve in the international institutions, will serve in the High Court, and the Palestinians will be demanded to deal with the data that Israel published in its report.
The Palestinians will be demanded to deal with that data. And Rebecca, that said, and Rebecca and Colonel Kemp, just back to the international arena, putting aside, how seriously this report will be taken in the international community, when it comes to the American administration, are they even going to deal with, if the UN pushes ahead, after the report comes out, and there'll be some unilateral moves on the part of the Palestinian administration? Is anybody looking in the United States administration to try and stop those moves? Will they be taking, and I'm asking you to theorize, Rebecca, I know they haven't reacted yet. The American president has said enough times that, I'm ad-libbing. He doesn't really care about the Israeli-Palestinian issue. But will they be taking any type of step to try and stop any kind of, reaction? What are we looking at when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian reports that are coming out?
Well, it would be strategically sort of low-hanging fruit for the administration to be able to show that they mean what they say. In other words, the administration has been saying for weeks, that partially as part of their charm campaign to make pro-Israel groups feel more comfortable about the Iran negotiations, they've been saying that they will always have Israel's side in cases in which there are unbalanced or unfair treatment in various international bodies, and we all know that generally means the UN.
Right.
And they've been saying for weeks now that they will have Israel's side and they will continue to have Israel's back, and so on and so forth. And so this is a very easy opportunity before the June 30th deadline for the Iran talks to show that they mean what they're saying. I would be very, very surprised if the administration takes a stance that would not be seen as defending Israel, or takes a stance that would be seen as perhaps even aggressive toward Israel. That would be a surprise and certainly a turnaround from its previous policies, particularly within the UN, and specifically that they've stated in past weeks.
Exactly. And Colonel Kemp, I want to ask you just to, looking at this subject, because the overlaying question for me, if I'm looking at Iraq 2003, coalition forces, Americans, British, coalition forces carpet bombing Baghdad, carpet bombing Iraq, killing scores, hundreds of thousands of civilians. Nobody ever put up a committee to investigate those actions. Why is this always happening with Israel, in your opinion?
Well, you could also look at what Saudi Arabia is doing in Yemen at present, and large numbers of civilians are dying. But I wouldn't want to compare Israel and Saudi Arabia, because of course they're very different. Israel remains a liberal Western democracy. Saudi Arabia is far from that. But you're right to compare them with the United States of America. And I think the reality is there's an entrenched anti-Israel movement around the world, which doesn't just encompass the United Nations. It also includes other international bodies like the EU, many national governments, and large sections of the media. And the media, I think, are the biggest problem, obviously not including I-24, but the media are one of the biggest problems for Israel, in as much as they put pressure on political leaders to criticize Israel when Israel is actually simply trying to defend itself and taking amazing steps to do so, steps that their own countries don't take. And it's the media, and I think the media agenda, that drives politicians to feel obliged to criticize. There is, countries, for example, European countries, have a huge Islamic population within their boundaries, and whether it's whether it's politically correct thing to say or isn't, the overwhelming majority of Muslims despise Israel. The overwhelming majority of Muslims. It's a hugely emotive issue, and it's an issue that the politicians feel obliged to appease them over. And it's not just, of course, their own population. It's other Arab governments in the region who, of course, there are significant Western national interests beyond Israel in the region, and there's a need to appease them as well. And so what you end up with a kind of 1938 situation where Western countries, such as, I hope not to a great extent, but to an extent anyway, the United Kingdom, other European countries, want to appease the Arab governments, want to appease their Muslim populations. And it's not just a question of appeasing the Nazis when they were attacking Poland and Czechoslovakia. It's also appeasing the Nazis, and it's trying to prosecute and bring criminal charges against the Czechs and the Poles who are trying to defend themselves. That's the situation we've got, which is unfortunately puts Israel into a very hard situation. Israel's not perfect, and the IDF aren't perfect.
Exactly. No, I think it's important also to remember that nobody is perfect in the situation. The fact that there is a self-introspective, investigation is smart. I want to thank you both for being with us. But Amir Tibon, because you cover Netanyahu constantly, and you made a very valid point that maybe looking at Gaza and ways to progress, which who knows if that's going to be done. But when it comes to the international standing of Israel right now, was this the right thing to do? This report?
Well, like I said, I'm not sure it's going to have the desired effect, but it's better to try than not to try at all. And it surely won't be enough to deflect the kind of pressures that Netanyahu is really concerned about. He's thinking about it day and night, really. He understands that, like Colonel Kemp said, there is an international move that is taking steam against Israel. This report could turn out to be a positive step. It's obviously not enough if you have, what the Palestinians are planning, whether it's at the UN or going to the International Criminal Court. If everybody in the world thought like Colonel Kemp, our situation would be wonderful, but unfortunately other powers see differently, and so Netanyahu is really breaking his head right now. What can I do to deflect some of these pressures? And it could lead to interesting situations.
Or to conclude it, I'm gonna conclude this item with let's blame the media for everything. Okay, we're gonna move along. Staying in the region, as we move to Syria, over 200,000 people have been killed in Syria's 4-year civil war, which one can only say, apropos the media, is highly underreported. But when it comes to Syria, the neutral Druze community, also underreported, remained largely unharmed throughout the 4 years of that civil war. That is, until al-Qaeda-affiliated rebels known as the Nusra Front killed 20 Druze in the northwest of the war-torn nation on Thursday. Israel has asked the United States to increase its aid to the Druze in Syria, where they are under attack from Sunni rebels in the Jabal al-Druze region of southern Syria. Still with us, obviously, our Walla diplomatic correspondent Amir Tibon, I-24 News Middle East analyst Ali, and joining us joining us in the discussion, somebody else later. Let's first take a look at the following report and break it down from there.
In Syria, a threat of near extinction is looming over the Druze minority, which resides in Suwaida, a mainly Druze city located in southwestern Syria, near one of the strongholds of the Islamic State in the country. The recent advance of the IS along the borders of the Druze community has concerned members of the Druze leadership outside Syria as well, in Lebanon and Israel. Recently, calls for Israeli intervention in favor of the Druze have grown.
Having approached several countries, including the US, we can now say that the Druze community will not sit idly by. A strong response will come.
Though Israel will not intervene militarily in Syria, it will provide humanitarian aid to relieve the crisis of the Druze community. Reports in the Israeli media say Israel is planning a buffer zone within Syrian territory to provide aid for the Druze. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has so far ignored calls to protect the Druze minority in his country, prompting what could be a violent response.
I call on you, brave citizens of Sueda, to stand with your brothers. We will not be the victims of the government. The government is supposed to protect us, but instead we have been protecting it.
Meanwhile, in the north of the country, the Al-Nusra Front says it regrets killing 20 Druze people in Idlib last week. But for the Druze community, things seem to be only getting worse, as they are caught in the crossfire between Syria's warring factions, with the IS threatening their existence.
Still with me in studio, Amir Tibor of Walla, diplomatic correspondent of Walla website. You came out with a report yesterday that basically claims that there are not high level, but that an Israeli delegate was meeting with the Syrian opposition leaders in Europe over the course of the last 2 years, as recent also as, and correct me if I'm wrong, as recent as like the last several months.
Well, I'm not sure what about the timing exactly, but it's a very senior Israeli official. There have been reports in the past about meetings with the Deputy Minister Ayub Kara, opposition leader Isaac Herzog.
Exactly, because Ali Rocket is not impressed, I have to say, but no, I mean...
This is the figure I'm referring to in my report, and unfortunately the Israeli censorship would not allow me to publish the name of that person, is very close to the Prime Minister.
And okay, so somebody asked, very close to the Israeli Prime Minister, in that political level, meeting with Syrian opposition to discuss possibly ways of the future, what will happen in that buffer zone.
I think both sides saw the importance of the meetings themselves as really more important than actual steps on the ground, because the Syrians have all these fantasies, you know, that maybe Israel will come and help, maybe Israel will intervene in the war, but Israel obviously is not going to do it. So there were more general discussions about what do we see in the region, where do we see eye to eye, what do we think about Hezbollah, about Iran, about the day after Assad. These are more long-term discussions. And of course, I assume, that I don't know for sure, but I assume there were also all kinds of discussions about more humanitarian things that are happening on the ground, like, for example, what we're seeing right now with the Druze, because it's very possible that Israel will somehow intervene, but not militarily. I don't see that happening. More on the humanitarian side, to aid somehow the besieged Druze community. So that's something that I expect was also discussed in those secret meetings.
You know, it's interesting that at that level, but I want to bring it back also to the Druze and Ali. That's, you know, when we look at the community of the Druze, who really, it's horrifying to me that the people who really try to stay completely devoid of any kind of affiliation. Terrible things over the weekend. We had a discussion here last week also with Tim Marshall, former foreign editor of Sky News, who said that the Druze might be the defining, maybe the defining people when it comes to that region in Syria where they're being fought at right now. What chance did they stand? I mean, there were reports that they were begging military tanks of the army not to get out of their villages. Where does it stand right now for that community?
Well, the situation is very critical, Yael. On one hand, the Druze are seeking any help from the regime, and other, by the way, most of the Druze that we talk to in that region are not appreciating the calls that are coming from Israel, from Druze in Israel, calling the Israeli government to help them. They think that this will emphasize the sectarian nature of the conflict in Syria, and they don't want to be part of this sectarian division inside the Syrian society. They need help, but they don't want this help to come from Israel. Of course, they are calling upon humanitarian aid. They are calling upon some military aid not coming from Israel. And it is very interesting to see the division inside the Druze society inside Syria. Most of the Druze leaders are supporting the regime, not because they are appreciating the Ba'ath ideology, because they think that for the moment the equation in Syria is it is the regime or the Islamic State, and in this equation, the position is clear to support the regime. And this support is one of the reasons that the Islamic State is thinking that there is a bill to close with the Druze community, that they are accusing it to be part of the regime machine. But the question is beyond the situation of the Druze. If the province of Sueda, where most of the Druze are located, will be taken, then the highway to Damascus for the Islamic State will be much more easy.
And that's where, you know, a lot of analysts, international analysts, are saying that will be the defining moment for that, or apropos for Assad. But bringing it back to, you know, Amir, if you're looking at Israel doing these meetings on such a high level, it's about the day after, isn't it? It's about, this is what Israel is mostly looking at.
Yeah, like I said, on the short term, Israel can somehow help on humanitarian issues like with the Druze.
Which we even know exactly, which we know they're doing even now.
The interesting question is the long-term questions of what you do on the day after Assad, how Syria looks like, who are the forces that you're working with. And basically, I think Israel is terrified of what's happening in Syria. You have so many threats on so many levels. You know, there's Hezbollah, people who are getting trained and better equipped and, you know, ready for a future conflict with Israel. You have all these Sunni terrorist groups, you know, Islamic State, Jabhat al-Nusra, who are getting closer and closer to the Israeli border. There's the question of the chemical weapons. What happens with the, you know, the remaining chemical, biological stockpile? We know that
still there.
Yeah, not everything has been evacuated. What happens with that? What happens with all kinds of really sophisticated weapons? And so if you can look for partners in the day after, and maybe, you know, when Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke last year during the Gaza war, you see how everything is connected, about a new diplomatic horizon. So we all said, oh, it's bullshit, it's nothing. But maybe one of the issues where Israel can somehow align its policy with other Arab regional players is Syria, because we see that the Arab states, Sunni Arab states, are much more determined than in the past to get rid of Assad's control of Syria. We see that there's finally coordinated moves to support the Syrian opposition. So I'm just, you know, floating a bubble here in the studio. But this is one of the issues.
There was a stable component in the Israeli attitude vis-a-vis the Syrian conflict, and it is try, as Amir mentioned, to align with the Saudi position. And to refer to Amir's position, since the very beginning of the Syrian conflict, Bandar bin Sultan, the former Saudi ambassador in the United States, and the former intelligence chairman of the Saudis, was leading meetings between Israelis and between Syrian leaders of the opposition, including Alawid that were appointed by the Saudis that might split from the regime. And we know about many officers of the Saudis that were spaced from the distance from their position because of being accused of being part of the family of that officer that met with the Saudis. I think at the Israeli is following the Saudis, but there is no long strategy vision of the Israelis. There are some even some relations between even Israel and al-Nusra front recently. The Nusra front and the small sons of the Prophet are those who are occupying the borders between Israel and between the Golan, between Israel and between Syria.
Border coordination, right?
And some witnesses can tell you that in Ziv Hospital,
all the time
in Ziv Hospital in Sfat, there are fighters of the Nusra.
But I think that the long-term picture is basically what we're looking at. Who will go to bed with whom is the million-dollar question. Thank you for being with me. When we get back, Shimon Peres, yes, that man marks 1 year since stepping down as the country's arguably most beloved president. We'll take a look at what he's doing now. First, the news. Good morning, I-24 News Morning Edition on this June.
I'm kidding. June 15th.
You can actually say anything to me and I'll buy. Okay. June 15th, 2015. It is your morning edition. It's the place to be because not just Ami Kaufman is here with a blue bow tie that matches the little handkerchief. This is getting so complex.
Oh, it is. Well,
it really is.
There's I'm a very complex person. Many layers.
Many layers to that. Tal Shalev with us in studio in a matching jacket. Yes, there we go. And before we start anything, we have to listen to the news you've missed while scanning the headlines. And for that, Ami Kaufman lives.
Yes. Okay. Remember Edward Snowden? Can't forget him, right?
You cannot forget Snowden. Still stuck in Moscow somewhere.
He's still stuck in Moscow. One of the more famous quotes, I don't know if you remember this from Edward Snowden, he said, "Nobody bad has got hold of my information." That was one of his most famous quotes.
It was. It's true.
But since then, a lot of Western officials have been, kind of scared about what information he has and if other people have maybe gotten hold of it. Well, the Sunday Times has said that Moscow and Beijing have deciphered documents stolen by Edward Snowden, and as a result, the UK has had to remove spies in various countries. Because they were fearing that they might be caught.
That he blew their cover.
Blew their cover, exactly. So
Now we know there are still spies out there.
Yeah, there's still spies out there.
There are still spies out there, and they moved apartments.
And they moved apartments.
And they no longer live. Okay.
No longer living there. So this is bad news for Snowden. After he had a kind of good run, when
I was about to say, it's interesting that something like this comes out now. Makes me always wonder why. What are we waiting for when it comes to the Snowden battle? Is more information about?
I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more.
No, because he's still sitting on more. So that's the thing. He said that he was going to release it throughout the years.
He has 1.7 million documents that he's holding. So eventually, it's going to all come out.
Yes.
Off to Al Arabiya and Rouhani, the Iranian president. First of all, if Al Arabiya keeps spelling Rouhani with a W like they hear, I'm going to just lose it. but okay, that's a different story. Usually I sing it with you.
Rouhani.
We have this. He had a speech yesterday in front of a large crowd saying that we will enrich both uranium and the economy in Iran. But the reason I'm bringing you this item is because you and me have a little thing about if the June 30th deal is going to happen.
Exactly.
And I'm kind of saying it's not going to happen. You're saying it is going to happen.
I'm putting money on it.
It's not going to happen on the 30th. It's going to happen, but it'll probably be the second or the third. So each of you can declare victory.
The second or the third.
Tal is right. Tal, I'm glad she brought that up because
Tal Shalev exactly knows it.
Because Rouhani with a W said at a news conference on Saturday he was the prospect for the talks, warning that a deal could be delayed if world powers brought new issues into play. So first of all he's blaming world powers.
He started with the blame.
Yeah.
And he gave us headline also that basically plays straight into the hands of the Israeli Prime Minister. You see, he probably reads that and goes, aha! But
yes.
yeah,
I think we can the best thing for everyone is just to blame Kerry's broken leg, That's the best excuse.
Yeah. Actually, that would be the excuse also.
But he's out now. I saw him walking, right? He's crutches and everything.
Crutches and everything, but still can't fly. Yes.
Back to Israel. The cabinet passed an advanced, bill called for force feeding Palestinian prisoners who are in administrative detention as a result of what's his name again? Adnan Khader, who is now 41 days starving himself without food. This is, by the way, the second time that he's done this. 4 years ago, he was released after he starved himself for 66 days. I don't know if he's going to make it this time. I'm sure that the first time he did had quite a bit of a toll on his body. But now he's 41 days. He's chained to his bed in a Safar Ofeh hospital, and now this bill wants to force feed him. There are already doctors in the Israeli Doctors Association that said that they will not cooperate with this. They will disagree because it's not an ethical move.
No, and it's interesting. I'm saying that Tal Shalev brought this headline also to my attention, to our attention yesterday, and I'm wondering out loud because is this the next international brouhaha when it comes to Israel? But it's interesting to hear, and I did not know that there are doctors that were refusing to cooperate.
Not only there are doctors, the main medical association of doctors. Is opposed to it, has been opposed to it for years, and usually you would hear human rights physicians or more left-wing affiliated groups cry out against this. But this time, this is like the mainstream of the Israeli medical establishment, of the Israeli doctors establishment.
Saying they won't do it.
They're saying they won't do it, but on the other hand, the public security minister says that he can find doctors inside the prison security service that will be willing to do it. This is definitely a tense debate.
Okay.
Yeah, it didn't happen last time, if I'm correct, when Khader Adnan was sitting for 66 days. The medical association did not come up that quickly as they did in this case. So it's pretty interesting.
Yes.
Off to Miri Regev. Artists, hundreds of artists held an emergency session yesterday against what they call a threat to their livelihood. She has been threatening to stop funding to an Arab-run theater and other threats. And I think what most famous, the most important thing that came out from the meeting last night is an actor called Oded Kotler, who called the people that follow the Likud and Miri Regev and so others, he called them cows, a herd of cows.
Yeah, a herd of cows.
And that got a lot of noise.
Division still, yeah. But we're gonna go straight now though to the story that is my favorite one.
Rachel Dolezal.
Rachel Dolezal.
Yeah, Rachel Dolezal is the head of the NAACP, the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, and she claims to be a black person, but apparently her folks just outed her and said she's not. She's white, and we have a report about that.
Let's take a look.
This morning, the adopted brothers of Spokane NAACP leader Rachel Dolezal speaking out for the first time about the controversy surrounding her racial identity.
She took me aside and told me to make sure that no one found out where she was actually from and that she was going to change her identity and for me not to blow her cover.
The most talked about
NAACP an uproar. Dolezal making national headlines after this interview went viral.
Are your parents, are they white?
The civil rights activist and Africana Studies professor accused of lying about her race, marking black on a City of Spokane volunteer job application.
She had the best intentions and she did some good, but she did not go about it in the right way. She grew up white and she was really privileged growing up.
This photo of Dolezal sporting long dreadlocks extensions at an MLK rally in January, appearing different from the blonde girl born in Montana seen in these photos released by her parents. Dolezal's brother saying Rachel's physical transformation started a few years ago.
It started out with the hair, and then she'd have, you know, probably a little darker tan. And it was very progressive.
Dolezal emailing NAACP chapter members over the weekend, writing, "There are many layers to this situation." Her credibility on the docket Monday when the NAACP board meets. Dolezal's predecessor as chapter president telling me he had no idea Dolezal might be white.
You had no idea your successor was white?
Right. It just didn't matter with me, really. So she said, I went by what she said.
And what did she say?
She said African-American.
The only thing I want to say is that I want to know how she got the hair down.
That's a good question.
How did she get? Okay. Yeah.
And her color is, you know, she's a bit more tan, isn't she? I guess that's tan stuff.
I'm speechless. Yeah.
And lastly, the oldest newlyweds in the world at aged 103 and 91 got married in Britain. George Kirby, 103 years old, and Doreen Lucky, 91 years old. That's a 12-year gap there. I don't know if the parents might be worried about that.
I just want to say that there's, you know what? Have faith, people.
I knew that. Look at me. I knew it.
Tal.
Behave yourself.
It does happen. Or as I said, I'm going to take it back to me. It does happen. If I got married, you will too. Okay, we're moving along. I just dropped my mic. But with us, Tal Shalev, with the best story of the week when it comes to political figures that people in Israel still like. Or, you know, there is a consensus about. That would be Shimon Peres. And you had the chance to spend a bit of the day yesterday with him. Doing what? Where is he nowadays?
Well, Peres is still, you know, he's 91, but he has more energy than many young people. And finally, after years, he's finally a citizen. But he's no ordinary citizen, but he has to fill up his time. So yesterday, we followed him we accompanied him on a trip to the Sarona compound in Tel Aviv. The Sarona compound, we'll see it in the upcoming report. But basically, it's a historic monument, an historic compound that was preserved in the past few years. And Peres went there and took a leap back in history.
Let's have a look.
Almost 1 year out of office, former Israeli President Shimon Peres is keeping himself busy, continuing to use his statesmanship skills and influence inside Israel and out. But this week, Peres, 91, took some time off his daily duties and took a leap back in history. Once upon a time, or more precisely, in 1948, when the State of Israel was established, the central government was located in Tel Aviv's Sarona compound. The former German Templar colony was established in the late 19th century, then used by the British Army. After declaring independence, government ministries were temporarily housed in the compound's buildings. And on May 18, 1948, the first meeting of Israel's government took place there. Government offices were officially relocated to Jerusalem shortly after that. But for decades, Israeli prime ministers used the compound as their Tel Aviv office and made endless crucial decisions within its walls.
The table of the government, as you can see, that's it. Small government, a small table with the painting of Herzl, the Declaration of Independence, and you can see Golda, you can see Remez, you can see Arav Maimon, and Ben Gurion, and Sharet, all those. And here that's the place that the most important decisions were taken, including the War of Yom Kippurim.
For Peres, who throughout his career filled almost every position in the Israeli cabinet and is perhaps the last remaining figure of the Jewish state's founding generation, it was an emotional tour, filled with nostalgia and memories. He reminisced about the first Prime Minister, David Ben Gurion, Israel's founding father, and Peres' personal mentor.
Every morning I would come in. I would come in the first because I was the youngest. I was then 24 years old. Ben Gurion was 65 years old. he asked me to come and work with him. I came from a kibbutz.
The Sarona compound, recently preserved, still radiates the magic of Israel's founding generation. But that generation, its ideals and its achievements, is slipping away into memory and into legend. There are no new Ben Gurions, and there will always be only one Shimon Peres.
No, I'm speechless because I think when you look at a piece like that and you look at that man, and irrespective of where, and I'm not going to say where one's, affiliation lies, there's something so dignified about Shimon Peres that is beautiful.
Well, they just don't make them like Peres anymore. That's the sad truth. But let's talk about Peres a bit and what he's been doing in the past year.
Thank you. Please.
Yitzhak Rabin, the former prime minister, used to call Peres a tireless schemer, or a generous statesman. That's the question. Is he a politician, an endless politician, or one of Israel's most gifted statesmen? He is a master of political survival. That we will give to him. So on the one hand, Peres is like Israel's Henry Kissinger. He's very much respected and esteemed. He has red carpets open for him. He gets red carpet treatment in almost all European capitals. And in the past year, he has been using his very extensive contact network to promote the ideals of peace and prosperity that he has been preaching for years. He's still very active on world stage. He meets with foreign leaders when they come to Israel. Just this last weekend, he had a meeting with the French Orange CEO Stéphane Richard, who was visiting in Israel. He spoke out against the boycott, and he has the Paris Center for Speech and for Peace, in which he promotes education and social projects, and he's very much into also technology hubs. He thinks that technology will actually bring peace, technology and progress and advance will bring peace. But on the other hand, he has been under very harsh critics this year. Just last April, the Marker Israeli Daily disclosed that he would receive a monthly retainer of $30,000 from Bank Hapoalim, one of Israel's biggest banks, in exchange for promoting the bank's affairs. He was under a lot of criticism, even though he explained that the money goes to philanthropy. It didn't help. It really hurt his public image. He had to cancel the contract, but he has been giving consulting services to several
I'm wondering
companies.
if there's anybody in the government, and I'm sure the answer is it's possibly no, because I think and not just here in the region, there's always not enough respect for people who age in any profession. Does anybody, is he involved, or does he give advice to any young politicians? Do we know?
Well, he is involved with the young politicians. He endorsed Isaac Herzog before the previous elections. He has close connections with Yair Lapid. He keeps connections with the young generation. But inside the government, the relationship between Netanyahu and Peres is very, very bitter. It's very sad. At the end of Peres's tenure, I think Netanyahu was already fed up with Peres interfering in his political affairs, and there has to be something said about the fact that Peres is a politician. He loves honor, and he has been doing a lot to get it. But in any case, I think that Netanyahu does appreciate the fact that Peres is considered in the world one of Israel's most respected statesmen, and that is something that does come into hand when in these difficult times for Israel and the international community.
Completely. And listen, I mean, at the end of the day, just to conclude this, we all want his gene, I think.
Oh, yeah, totally.
No, I mean, come on, 91, 92, we're not even sure yet, and he's really, it feels like he's been around forever, but he's going to also be around forever.
Definitely.
Yeah, he's probably going to bury us all. But that said, when we get back, Israel's ink lovers come together at the Tel Aviv Tattoo Convention, and we sent our very own correspondent, Amit Kling, there to sample the goods, and he took that assignment to heart. Do stay with us. It's going to be up close and personal, and before anything else, let's hear the morning headlines. good morning. I-24 News Morning Edition on this June 15th, 2015. I had to look down because I'm very excited. Our next topic is really one for the books, if not only for the reporter who went out, investigated, risked his life, and came back to tell the story. Here we go. Some 50 tattoo artists, Israelis and foreigners, took part in the annual tattoo festival in Tel Aviv, which I had no idea about myself. It took place actually a week ago, and thousands of visitors participated in the three-day event being held for the third time in the coastal Israeli city, as known as Tel Aviv. Now, inspired by the global phenomenon of international tattoo conventions, the Israeli Body Art Society production company came together to create the tattoo convention in Tel Aviv. And before we break it down, Amit Kling was there, here with me in studio. And you had a chance to go, be there, tell us what it's about, and also to go like the extra mile. So before we do anything, let's take a look at your report.
All right. It's the third consecutive year that the Israeli Tattoo Convention fills a large club in Tel Aviv with the buzz of inking machines and becomes a showcase for some of the most striking body art around. While the convention itself, which gathers the best tattoo studios in the country and features some international guests as well, mainly attracts the types most people would automatically associate with the scene, there's no doubt about one thing. While the logos for most tattoo parlors still resemble those of metal bands, the art itself no longer belongs to anyone in specific.
When it started, it was something more like to be connected to the scene, and slowly it's become more like a big festival, the place you go to find your next artist, perhaps, to make a tattoo, to see some new stuff in the scene. We have many people who's not just tattooing, they do different kind of art that connected to tattoos, clothing, jewelries.
I think that nowadays there's a lot more room for original creative work. The clients are a lot more educated about various styles and people coming up with really original things. The whole art school movement that got into tattooing in the past 5 years completely changed it.
One of the centerpieces of the convention is Swazi Dan, a tattoo artist from Germany who abstains from using tattoo machines. Instead, Dan does his body art as it was done in ancient times.
I became more interested into the history of tattooing, and that's why I choose that way of tattooing, the traditional art, and also to give some positive energy to the customer.
Dan's techniques seem to be mostly for connoisseurs, perhaps a way of body art diehards to differentiate themselves from the newcomers. But do the veterans of the scene miss the days it was more underground?
For me, no. I'm happy to see more and more artists growing and making their own, way of art. And I hope to see it, now more and more people.
I think it's great that it's outside because, there are so many different artists doing so many different things. I think that the more creative people get into this, from various directions, the richer the business becomes.
At this point, the familiar buzz of the tattoo machines all around me works up my own appetite. There's just too much great ink around me not to get some myself. So I set up with Anat Nimni, one of the most sought-after artists in Tel Aviv. A few minutes later, there's a stencil she draws freehand, and we're good to go.
Here we go! I don't think tattoos are really art. They're more like the creation, because I think art takes itself too seriously. Tattoos are more like street art. It's a bit easy, it's easier, and it's not taking itself that seriously, even though it's a lot of responsibility to make tattoos. But still, there's humor about it.
And half an hour later, we're done, at least for now. One thing's for sure. Few people at the convention, myself included, would swear by any tattoo that this one would be their last.
Dude. Guys, I really think this deserves a moment before anything else.
Oh, come on.
Bravo. This is journalism, okay? This is journalism at its hardcore. With us in studio also is MA student in Gender Studies program at Tel Aviv University, Malkiela Ben Shabbat, exactly. Helping us tonight, and of course, our one and only, Natalie, we'll get to you in a second, but you're joining in the party. Amit, before anything else,
yes.
And because we saw this amazing report, you took it, you went the extra mile.
I did.
How many tattoos do you have?
I have now 5.
Now you have 5.
Now I have 5.
Because of us.
This one isn't finished. It's gonna be finished in a couple of weeks. It's gonna be like a totem pole design, which I was not planning on getting. Like this was maybe the interesting part, that I just went in the convention with little to no idea as to what I'm gonna do. And we kind of did it freehand.
Right.
Now, most of the designs all of the designs I did before were very thought out. This was kind of spontaneous.
I love it because, you know, my tattoo, which will not be shown on in this studio, okay? And you did it spontaneously. We went heads on. I was smashed drunk when I got mine. I was one of those. I was below par, you know, throwing up, going.
Being at work at that particular time, I cannot confirm nor deny allegations of drunkenness.
Well, I think that what kind of differentiates between, like, I guess, mainstream tattooing and people that are really into tattoos and from the tattoo culture. Like, you were drunk, you were probably like, I don't know, I guess
in my
18.
30s,
oh, okay.
Mid-30s. That's how sad and pathetic I am.
We're like, let's get a tattoo. And people that are really into tattooing and kind of see it as a body modification style, they really put a lot of thought into it. And it's not a spontaneous act.
It's not a spontaneous thing, and because we're looking at, you have some beautiful, and I'm honest with you, I'm looking at you, that is beautiful. I would never ever do this. I don't have it in me, in many ways, but what is the, it's beautiful, it's like a painting, and when you say like the art of body modification, what stands behind it for you?
Well, I mean, for me, I have here like stuff that is like role models. I have here a bunch of Greek mythology. So it's kind of like putting my inner thoughts on my skin, so the world can see what I think, my ideologies.
And your ideologies, I can't discard the fact that you're an MA student of gender studies in Tel Aviv University. You're one of these people that my husband hates. But
a lot of people.
So, no, seriously. And it's a big battle at home, many, many times. Don't worry, we will kill him together. But there is also the notion, because we did not used to see women so often, I think it's becoming more fait accompli, that, cover their bodies and whatnot. What does it mean for women?
Well, I think that nowadays it's very interesting. I mean, especially in the States, the amount of women actually outnumbered tattooed men, which is historically very interesting, because this was always like a boys' game, right? A man's world. Exactly.
Or
no, I mean,
or somebody like you, or the Unabomber.
Okay. So what's really interesting is that when you look at it, so you think that women nowadays, they're very involved with makeup and fitness.
Yes.
So in a way, tattoos are much about like consumer society. So that's one way to look at it. But on the other hand, I think it also has to do with the liberation and with the fact that women are feeling more comfortable to express themselves on their bodies.
And there was one woman in that, and we were discussing this off camera in Amit's report, that had this Hello Kitty with eyes open straight here, which to me is a great statement. I think Hello Kitty is the devil, but and she opened her eyes.
But that's what's so interesting, that now that there's more tattooist ladies. So you see more feminine-themed tattoo styles. It could be makeup, for example. It could be Hello Kitty. I would say sewing machines. Right. This is stuff that you didn't used to have. So it's literally putting symbols of womanhood on the skin. I mean, you could say that this is not feminist, but I think it is in a sense. Also, like putting motifs that are related to women. So.
Yeah, motifs that are related to women. It was interesting also, Amit, because you were there. There were a lot of women tattoo artists.
A lot,
right?
A lot.
More,
less than men.
I can't speak what?
Still less than men.
I don't know about the numbers. I mean, I like tattoos. I have some. I'm gonna get more probably in the future. It's probably
spoken like a true caveman. Because we had
it's going on.
Because there's Hello Kitty. Hold on, this is the one thing that I really like, because there's Hello Kitty. Her eyes are open. Much just like what? Yeah, no, this is beautiful. I can't even explain why I'm relating to this so much, because she took the pinkness of her out of it.
Yeah. She emptied out the meaning of it.
Bingo. She emptied the meaning.
But what I saw in the convention, I think, is a scene in Shift that is still inhabiting its old form and also exploring some new possibilities.
Right.
Are you talking art-wise?
Both art-wise, but also community-wise. I mean, I don't consider myself in any way part of any tattoo community. I don't really think about the issue of body modification.
Then why do you get them?
I just like them. It doesn't really cut that deep for me.
Yeah.
I just like a tattoo and then I get one. This is maybe one part in life which I allow to be very, very simplistic to me.
Right.
It's just this is nice. I'm gonna do it.
But Mikhail, when I look at you, it's not simplistic for you.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know
this is clearly a way of life in many ways.
Yeah.
Right? How many do you have?
I don't know. I have a lot.
You have a lot,
and I want to get more. But then again, it's difficult because this is like one of the things we say. Like, okay, you get a few tattoos, it's okay. It's kind of normal now, right? But when you're like fully tattooed, that's not normal, especially for a woman to be fully tattooed. So you get a lot of looks, and people right away, they think about it as like in a sexual form, because tattoos on women were always considered to be somewhat sexual.
Right.
Because historically, I mean, everything goes back to history. The first tattooed ladies that used to exhibit themselves in circuses, so they were, I mean, tattooed from the neck to the toes.
Yeah.
And this is like a time that there were Victorian morals.
Yeah.
And they were sitting there half naked, so.
Listen, it's fascinating stuff that we can continue, but, you know, Natalie, I know that you really want to be in this. Natalie Ehrlich also with us. But completely, I totally agree with you. And so much to say. Still, Amit Kling, the man, the god, the psycho. Natalie Ehrlich from The Economy magazine, host of The Economy magazine, but we're all still sitting at the table. It's not tattoos. It's the ID. It's what happened at the Herzliya conference.
Right.
And it's Israel, not just tattoos, but also high-tech nation.
Exactly, startups. So the similar theme of boldness and spontaneity.
Nice.
So here we go with startups, with the Startup Nation. So as we know, Israel has some of the highest density of startups anywhere in the world. And we got a chance to speak with a number of interesting guests from also all over the world.
Right.
So let's take a look. We got the chance to speak with the managing partner at JVP, which looks and backs a lot of cybersecurity startups now in Beersheba, not just in Jerusalem. So let's take a look at what he said.
Let's take a look at what he had to say.
There is something very unique going on in Beersheba, and those of you who haven't been to Beersheba lately, I suggest that you come over and visit. What you have there is a very unique ecosystem. So first of all, you have the Ben Gurion University. It's the fastest growing university right now in Israel, which has a dedicated cyber faculty. Okay, so that's one element. The other element is the move of the technology units of the Israeli military to a campus that is based just next to the Ben Gurion University. And in the middle of all that, we've put the high-tech park, which has people like Oracle, IBM, Lockheed Martin, and many others. And in the center of all that, we have the JVP Cyber Labs that creates all these new cyber companies in this compound.
Natalie, that's a man without tattoos.
Indeed.
Indeed. But I was about to say, okay, Beersheba becoming again as well a form of like a little hub of export of the Israeli mind when it comes to high tech. Okay.
Right. The interesting thing is we talked a lot about the evolution of the Israeli startup scene here and whether it can actually mature into this mature tech nation.
Exactly.
Everyone knows of it as this startup scene with a lot of startups, a lot of interesting ideas, people coming up with really great technologies.
But then they sell them out.
Exactly. Okay. So the question is, can they really develop the Israeli Microsoft? Can they develop the Israeli Google that will continue to be a bastion of employment here? Right. So that was another interesting theme, and we had some people more optimistic than others. We did speak with The Economist, and they're the senior editor there. He actually had an optimistic view, so let's take a look.
Listen.
So I think one should recognize that there are a few phenomena that are going on. First of all, almost more than any other country around the world, there are more multinationals that are coming in, acquiring companies and creating very significant design centers in Israel. Okay, that's true for companies like EMC and Cisco. It's also true for Apple that open up their only design center outside of the US in Israel. So that contributes a lot to local employment. Beyond that, we see a growing trend of companies that goes beyond just being a small startup and becoming very established.
Now let's really listen to the editor of The Economist saying what he said, okay?
I think there are other problems with Israel, which are not to do with the startup sector and not to do with the scale-up size. I think that you have a lot of sort of badly run conglomerates which sort of continue to exist, which sort of push up prices but don't provide very good services. I think you have a lot of state-owned companies which are a bit monopolistic and not very competitive. It all strikes me this is strange. This is the world's most advanced 21st century country in many ways, but it's also the world's sort of surviving 1950s economy. It reminds me, some of it reminds me of 1950s Britain with some fairly old line conglomerates.
I'm optimistic. And if anything, we are the tattoo startup nation. Okay, I want to thank everybody for being in studio this morning, Michaela. You look amazing. Thank you. Really. I don't know what to say to you. But
you never do.
Don't ever do that. When we get back, sports people, the NBA, somebody won. I don't know who, but there'll be somebody who knows everything about it. So do stay with us.
People throw balls into baskets.
In the air. First the news. There we go. I-24 News Morning Edition on this June 15th, 2015. Everybody's so excited because I've got two men in the studio with me. Yes, one of them being Danny Swibel, who's sitting here smiling. The other one, is the man I never leave home without. And that's Ami Kaufman. And it's so much trouble with the one at home, but...
Ami Diners Kaufman.
Ami Diners Kaufman?
Like Diners Club, or was that American Express? I get mixed up.
It's American Express.
Sorry, I don't know my credit cards.
Yeah, don't leave home without it. Was it American Express? Who knows? You weren't born, Danny Swibel.
Wow.
You really weren't born.
I'm a youngster.
Danny Swibel of sports at I-24 News with the most exciting news, and it was exciting because it's the NBA.
Oh, just got finished a few hours ago, and I told you before, I really don't sleep right now. These games are 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
I set up, I wake up at 6 o'clock before work, try to watch them, or I have to watch them after work, and then I avoid everybody because I don't want people to give me the story. Yeah,
right.
exactly. Spoilers.
Does that
so you're
work?
worried about the Game of Thrones spoilers, you're worried about the game spoilers. I'm just constantly avoiding. Exactly. So this was another very juicy game, very juicy indeed.
Finals, right? NBA.
It's the finals. The Warriors are now up 3-2. The game just finished, and LeBron James.
What does that mean?
So it's a best of 7 series. Let me go in order. Best of 7 series, and it started off very close. It was back and forth, and they were all going to overtime the first 2 games. And the story was starting to develop that LeBron James is doing everything. He's carrying the team on his shoulders.
Exactly.
And they actually had won 2 in a row. And it was looking like Golden State, who has the MVP, Steph Curry. We talked about him because he has a very attractive mother.
Yeah.
If you remember.
Yes. Hot mama.
Yeah,
hot chick.
So we were saying, oh, he's not playing up to form. Where has he been in this series? All of a sudden, the last 2 games in a row, he just started stepping it up. And just a few hours ago, I mean, he really handed it to Cleveland. And they won in glorious fashion.
And Cleveland, I mean, I know that because we're sitting in the Middle East and we're sitting in Israel, and Cleveland is best known, for Israelis because of David Blatt, who, it's like the golden boy, the golden Jew, the man who,
It's true, it's true.
Yeah.
It's funny because they call LeBron James King LeBron, but I saw in Hebrew, it's like King LeBron and King David.
And King David, my
There's
God.
definitely the worship of that.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens now.
I've heard a lot of that David Blatt is best when his back is up against the wall. And now his back is certainly up against the wall, and maybe.
Do they stand a chance?
Absolutely, they do, because again, LeBron is one of the best players. He is the best player in basketball right now, if in not all time.
No, as I said to him,
he's one of the best.
He sounds like a god, and
he truly is. His speed, his agility. I mean, everything about his overall game. He's the best overall player, and right now they're down 3-2. But they're definitely going to go home to Cleveland, and he's going to want to take 1 game back, which would mean it goes to 7 games. Once it's in the final 7 games, even if Golden State is at home, it's 1 game. It's a 1-game series, so whoever wants it takes it. So this series, I feel, is definitely going to 7. It's pretty much the battle of the MVPs.
It is, but what does that mean to you? Because the Bulls aren't there.
Well, I'm still very cut up about my Bulls not being there. I've had to do some therapy sessions, as we've talked about before. The Bulls, I guess, were the better team. They were injured. This is one of the things that we do have to say about talking about Cleveland, because LeBron has had to be everything because his whole team is injured.
2 players, right?
Yeah, so the thing is, I mean, one of the guys Love was replaced really well with the guy Tristan Thompson, because Tristan Thompson is a rebound extraordinaire. But you could definitely see that Cleveland doesn't have the depth, because by the 4th quarter, you could see all their players really laboring because they put in some major minutes, some unparalleled minutes. Again, Cleveland doesn't want to use that as an excuse, but it definitely is a factor in the series. But these games have gone close. In the 4th quarter, they were pretty much tied. So in the end, it just seems like the better team who won in each game just wanted it at the end. Anybody could take the series. I'm saying it goes to 7 games. LeBron will be LeBron, and he'll continue to try to steal it away.
To steal the whole thing. But You have another game that you're very passionate about.
So yes, another series that is up 3-2. It's the Stanley Cup Finals.
Oh, wow. You don't hear about that in Israel too much.
I was about to say, he comes to me with the sports of the winter.
Yeah, we don't have winter sports here, so we got to understand it is the Middle East after all.
The Stanley Cup, for those of you in the Levant, is hockey.
That's right.
Yes.
So the way I've gotten over the pain of my Chicago Bulls is my Chicago Blackhawks are now up 3-2, ready to take the Stanley Cup. I mean, this is the most special thing. The Stanley Cup is everything. And the Hawks...
But do they have an Israeli coach?
Yes.
I can't say that they do, so I'm sorry to bore you guys with all the details of this.
Yeah.
But what makes the Hawks particularly special is that from 1961 to 2010, they had a drought, so they weren't winning any championships. And they're one of the original teams when the league started in 1917, I believe. So finally, in the start of this decade, 2010, this is the third time the Hawks have appeared in the finals. They've won 2 of them. So they're going for their third. This is true dynasty, what we're talking about here. So they're up 3-2. They're going against a very fast Tampa Bay Lightning team. But the Hawks in white, you could see the beautiful logo. It's a very famous logo in the league. I mean, they're really ready to take it.
The thing about hockey, and I'll make a confession, you know, I'm a graduate of American high school, and I played field hockey in my youth. Yeah, I was actually every goalie's fear. I was. I played field hockey. I went through like field hockey marathons, whatnot. I was kind of violent. This, though, you know, this to me is a sport. On ice hockey, I never got to the whole. I can't connect to the whole violence thing. But
some people do talk about the fighting, the excess fighting. Remember, there's so much intensity and speed in the game that kind of adrenaline. I guess they let them.
You have to release it somewhere.
You have to release it. And they have a lot of pads on, so it's not like they're hitting each other in the face, But
in the end,
it is intense. This actually was a very tough hit. One of the best players on the Lightning actually ran into the goalpost, going full speed. So he was out for the last game. Hopefully he's back. I always want all these games, everybody at full capacity. I never want my team to win because the other team is injured. Really, because this is important. And so the Hawks, I want them to really stick it to the Lightning with Tampa Bay having their full team, and then it's going to be so much more glorious.
Yes. I got to say, from ice hockey, and it's the passion and the fact that I almost understand what you're telling me that really makes it worthwhile. Danny Swibel.
Yes.
Danny Swibel. But it's time for the man, the bow tie, and the design, right? And the design that is Ami Kaufman.
Yes.
The viral spiral that is the web review. Look, I'm getting myself excited about it.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a story that I-24 is on top of this story. We followed this. No, we didn't break it, but we're following it. We're on top of this.
Shoot.
Okay,
Yes.
Homer and Marge are not breaking up. They are not breaking up. I told you before that they were, but they are not breaking up. Al John, the executive producer, said that I never said the word divorced. That implies finality. I was surprised that people would interpret it as a final move. The show's Twitter account even went further and put up a tweet with the picture of Bart writing on the board, Homer and Marge are not breaking up, as you can see on this.
Oh my God.
You know how he writes everything like a million times?
To be American and insane. So they're not breaking up, but there will be some drama.
No, he will be distracted, I guess you could say, by Lena Dunham, the pharmacist, in the first episode. But by the third episode, apparently, everything will be fine and they'll be back together.
And it's like 25, 26 years of the
26 at least. Yeah, 26.
It's the fabric that American culture is made of.
Right.
They can't break them up. It's like it's worse than Brangelina.
I don't know how people even thought that could happen.
No, it's ridiculous. Yeah. Okay.
So this is a new one from BuzzFeed, and there's a real nice campaign on Twitter. There was a scientist, a Nobel Prize-winning scientist called Tim Hunt, who turned out he's in favor of single-sex labs. What did he say during a conference in Korea? He said, "Let me tell you about my trouble with girls. You fall in love with them, they fall in love with you, and when you criticize them, they cry." This got a lot of female scientists, rightly so,
I'm glad
very
you took
angry.
A breath, and I'm glad,
very angry. And the online magazine called Vagenda suggested that women scientists upload pictures to Twitter of themselves at work with the hashtag distractingly sexy in protest. And let's see a few of these tweets, which are gorgeous.
Yes, okay.
Okay, first of all, call for all female scientists to upload pictures of themselves with the work. That's the Vagenda. Let's see the next tweet.
Yes, okay.
The next tweet is the picture.
The picture.
Here, you see all these tweets of women in various. Let's see the next one. There's some more.
Yeah, there's some more coming up. Sexy, distracting at work.
Luckily, this is the workers are female.
Or female.
The female bees are.
I know. This is hot and bothered.
Yeah.
I mean, very sexy right there.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Very, very, very sexy. Sexy photos of themselves.
Okay.
Like, no matter what we do. No, I'm sorry. There's a woman having a muff.
She fell in love with her microcentrifuge.
With her bingo.
Okay.
No matter what we do, that glass ceiling.
I know.
Yeah.
I love that one. Anyway, on to another a woman. This is a little girl. She's 6 years old. Her name is, she's from North Carolina. Her name is Johanna Cullen, and she can dance. She is channeling Aretha Franklin. Let's see this one.
Okay, we got to see this. And they're all basically standing aside. I love it. She doesn't know the words. I'm just going to go like this. Yeah, I'm just going to move my lips and
millions.
She's got the moves down.
She's totally channeling. Okay.
Yeah.
I've known you for a few years, but I think in the next few minutes I'm going to know you even better because the world is divided into two people, as this bored panda piece can tell you. I want you to play along with me a little.
I will.
I'm going to show you two pictures. You tell me which one. First of all, the picture with the headline. Which one are you in this iPhone, for example?
Which one am I on this iPhone?
Are you the one alarm clock, or do you have
three.
several? Okay, let's see the next one.
Okay.
Let's see the next one.
Next one coming up.
What kind of person are you? Do you take a...
I'm the bite.
You're the bite?
I'm the bite.
See, I'm the exact opposite. I'm the one on the left there.
Seriously?
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Okay.
Let's see the next one. Bookmark. Do you fold?
I fold.
Oh, that's horrible.
I fold.
You fold?
Dude.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
okay, let's see the next one.
I got no class. No. Yeah. Okay. Next one. What is that?
How do you slice your toast?
Who the heck slices their sandwich?
Next one.
Yes. Okay. That is what is going on
all
here.
Your apps, the notification. Do you open all your so you don't have any notifications?
Oh
or
my God! Yeah.
Which one are you?
No, I've got.
How does your iPhone look?
Yeah, I've got like 1,000. The 2,163.
Is there another one? Yeah.
Okay.
Do you organize all your apps into different, or are you just all over there?
They're all over the place. Yeah, they're all over the place.
Sushi with your fork with
chopsticks.
Really?
Chopsticks. I'm a New Yorker.
Okay.
I'm a New Yorker. Chopsticks, and I like beautifully dip it in. Okay. And please enter your birthday to continue, as opposed to.
If you lie about your
never.
age.
I don't.
You give the exact age?
The exact age. My exact age is 43, and I was born on the 20th of February, 1972.
Okay. All right. Do we have time for another one?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course we do.
Look, I don't condone violence, but this video is amazing. Two apparently drunk Russians somewhere in Moscow.
But what is this thing that I just went through?
It was a test that showed that I don't know you at all.
Gotcha.
It proved it.
And the conclusion being...
Oh, it's not a test. It just, shows you what kind of person you are.
If you're insane or not.
Insane. And what do we think?
The world is, people like vanilla or chocolate. I don't know.
And bring it back to me.
Yes.
Okay.
I think Tristan meant she's a serial killer.
Exactly. I'm a serial killer. Okay.
Two apparently thugs in Russia and Moscow went out of a liquor store and they started picking on a guy who was looks a lot older than him. Turns out he's an ex-boxer. Let's see what happened here. Let's see what happened.
Brilliant. Let's play Elderly Man's lightning quick reaction.
Yeah.
Yes. Nice. Yeah. Nice. Okay. Whoa.
Two of them on the ground.
Whoa. Okay. For Danny Swibel, for somebody who likes hockey, I know. I think that one works well for you.
Oh yeah. That's
and
nice.
he's like. They're down.
They're down.
One of them is dead, I think.
They can't get up.
Oh my god.
They can't. Wow.
You don't mess with a boxer.
You do not mess with a boxer. I love it. And only in Russia. And only in Russia, folks. That kind of fun stuff. Actually, that's me. Okay.
And Google now is doing some kind of experiment now. As we can see from this item from New York Daily News, they have developed a calorie counter for Instagram. So you can take your phone, okay? You can take your phone. You have some food in front of you on your plate. You take a picture of it, and it will tell you exactly how many calories, that hamburger has.
I'm sorry, if I wasn't upset enough by people, this is the devil's scheme at work. This is all we hate, which is people shooting, taking pictures of their food.
Right.
Do you like that? I don't know. I hate that.
Hate it.
I've dabbled in it.
I'm sorry, I love it.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure you do. Exactly. I'm like, oh, I've cooked something. Okay.
Yeah, I do that.
And I know. But everybody putting their plates on. But now to also know the calories.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I just made this amazing cheesecake. I will not take a picture of it with that after I use the.
And give it to people again.
Yeah, like 5,000.
But I want to stop and pause and trail back to the line that Ami Kaufman just said, which was, "I just made this amazing cheesecake."
Very nice. Can you bring any for us?
Yeah, can you be like, Ami Bakes.
Sorry, I finished that pretty
Ami
quickly.
Bakes. Ami Bakes. The man in the bow tie bakes. Yes, the last one.
One last one. There's a new. First of all, it's Pornhub is the largest free pornographic website.
Thank you.
They're going to put. They have an Indiegogo campaign to put two of their porn stars, two of their porn stars into space to have sex in space. Let's see the video of the campaign.
Please.
Whoa.
Yes.
I've had sex pretty much everywhere and every way that you could imagine. I've had sex on almost every different continent with all kinds of different women. Don't get me wrong, I love what I do and who I do, but this is a really unique opportunity to break ground in the adult industry. I'm beyond excited to be a part of the Pornhub space program for this exact reason. I've had sex.
Olivia is Brandon always helping for the next.
Well, I am beyond excited myself.
I can update you. This project that was going to cost $3.4 million so far, they have raised $20,000. That's all they got.
Seriously?
So that's all they got. Apparently, nobody really wants to see them doing this in space.
I do. If I had one more savings account left, I would break it open and send it out there. My God.
I didn't tell you. By the way, I missed the film's title is supposed to be called Cosmones: A Spank Time Odyssey, starring Neil deGrasse Tyson. You know, instead of Neil deGrasse Tyson.
People were back. Morning television is back.
I'm sorry, was that not suitable
Listen,
for work?
I'm going to leave you with that. Yeah. No, thank you. And if you do want to see people having sex in space, now you know where to go. But if you want to check us out, turn to Twitter or Facebook, all those social networks, I-24 News Morning Edition. And do not forget to tune in tomorrow morning for another edition of the Morning Edition, where you get information about the Pornhub. So that was it. Now the news.